Hello. Okay, I am doing a series of autobiographies of myself. Started out writing, and then I got the idea, just being observant, why don't I just tape myself? Because what I'm about to do, what I'm about to show you, I don't have from my parents or grandparents. And I wish I did. I wish I had something like I'm doing now. So I call this my Autobiography Podcast, whatever. I'll have to come up with a fancy name for it. But, so, you're watching this on YouTube. I have it on a unlisted part of my channel. So you got the link from me or somebody. And right now, this is a generic version, just to show you what I'm doing, and also I really want to put it out to the world. You need to do this. You need to do something like this, because I know you wish you had answers to your whole life, and from your parents' perspective and your grandparents. And I don't have anything like this from them, and they're all gone on to glory, and I can't ask them questions now. But see, now I'm doing this for my offspring and, grands and great-grands, whatever, in my family. And that way, they have something that they can fall back on as far as questions. And in this time, and I do these in 28 segments episodes, because my camera, I got it set for 28 minutes. So, let me tell you about what do I do, and I'm telling you why I do it. But I think it's good for everybody to do. We all have those picture albums sitting around with old pictures on there, and you may have pictures of your parents and grandparents in there, but those mean nothing because nobody watches them, nobody looks at them anymore, and also there's no story behind the pictures. I also have thousands, probably 10,000 pictures on my computer. And I'm also going to, a second segment of the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to actually talk through the computer and bring up every picture and tell the story behind the pictures. So this is something years from now, my offspring and generations down can look at it, and hopefully they can save this and have things that they can do. I've already done 40 of these episodes. I started out in the 50s, and I've already done 40, and I'm already only up to 1970. So I still got a long way to go, but I stopped because I found out I can also branch out and do different episodes about families or friends that I knew, or situations that I knew, or jobs that I worked that would only interest a certain few. So I start a lot of the podcasts with this song, and I can't play it because of copyright concerns, but if you want me to sing it to you, I won't. But you all know the song. If anyone should ever write my life story, for whatever reason there might be, you'll be there. Okay. So, in my other podcasts, there's a lot of situations where my friends and family will be included in the stories that I'm telling, because I do have a vivid a vivid memory of my childhood. So there's things like, I wish I could talk to my parents about what did they think about the presidents that were there when they were growing up. Did anything that happened have a direct effect on them? What about technology back there? I know my parents used to tell me, oh, we didn't even have TVs when we were growing up. Well, what did you do during the day? What did you do? What kind of music did you like? You know, things like that. What songs did you listen to? What kind of radio did you listen to? Did you even have a radio? So, I'll tell you this, and this is the generic portion, so I'm not going to mention any names or stories or anything, but when I was born, Eisenhower was president. Nixon was vice president. Then there was Kennedy and Johnson. And I remember the day that Kennedy was assassinated. We were sent home from school, and I remember watching on TV when Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald. And then Johnson was president with Vice President Hubert Humphrey. And then Nixon was president and went through the Watergate scandal and all that. His vice president was Spiro Agnew, and then Gerald Ford. His second term was Gerald Ford. Spiro Agnew was ousted some scandal or something. And then Gerald Ford was president, and his vice president was, who was his vice president? I don't know if he even had a vice president. I can't even think of Gerald Ford's vice president. I have to look that up. And then Jimmy Carter was president with Walter Mondale as vice president. But see, as I go through my autobiography, I'm telling what was I doing back then, and that way it gives them the sense of my history. Because I'm a history buff anyway, so. And after Jimmy Carter, then there was Ronald Reagan, Vice President George Bush, and George H.W. Bush. And see, I can tell you exactly what he affected. That affected me directly. Reagan cut government pensions in half during his term, and there was a lot of things that affected me directly. And then there was, after Reagan, then Bush had one term, and then it was, and his vice president was Cheney. No, his vice president was, I have to look that up. I forget who the first George Bush's vice president was. Then there was Bill Clinton, and his vice president was Gore. And then there was George Bush and Dick Cheney. And then there was Barack Obama with Joe Biden as vice president, and then there was Trump. And now today is September 4th, 2020, so we're in the middle of an election. And so Trump and Pence are running against Biden and Kamala Harris. So we'll see what happens. Just the past couple of days, Trump has been telling people, I guess his side of his base, to vote twice. But I'm not going to get into politics anymore about this. We'll see how it goes. But So, let me just give you some ideas on what you can talk about. For me, let's talk about telephones. I remember when I was a kid, we had to learn our phone number by words. Axminister. My telephone number when I was a kid, Axminister 1. And then you say, so the first two letters of Axminister were, and you dialed it on the phone pad, A and X, so that would have been 291. And then when we moved, our phone number was Clearbook. But then in the mid to late 60s, they stopped using those first two numbers. So Clearbook was 25, the first two numbers. And there's a whole bunch of words where the first two words, so I know BE, then we just started calling it BE1 instead of Belmont 1. So I remember in Detroit, their first, for dialing the weather, I used to call this number a lot, GR. And I don't know what the GR meant, grand, whatever. There's a lot of words that, but, and that's how it was. And of course, back then we only had maybe 2 phones in the house, period. Maybe 3. One in the kitchen, one in the dining room, and one in my parents' room. But we only had one line. Now, when I became a teenager, I'm talking on the phone more often. And for those my age, they remember the white pages. Everybody's phone was listed, and some of the phones had parents' number and child's number. Well, they had 2 lines in their house. Well, we only had 1 line in our house. And this will be interesting for anybody that worked for the telephone company. Back then, I'm talking about 50s, 60s. This kind of stopped in the 70s when you could call the operator. If you called a number, it was busy. We got busy signals. If you couldn't talk to anybody. Now it busts in on the line and it's call waiting. But we got a busy signal. So if you wanted to talk to somebody, you really wanted to talk to somebody, you could call the operator and say, operator, could you bust in on this line and tell them it's an emergency call? And the operator would go into the other conversation and say, so-and-so wants to call you. Will you give up the line? And the person that's talking either says yes or no. If they say yes, they hang up and the person calls. If they say no, nothing you can do. The operator will come back and say they refuse to give up the line. I said, okay. You could also call the operator and say, operator, this line's been busy a long time. Can you break in and see if there's any conversation? And the operator would go on and listen for a couple seconds. If there was conversation, she'd come back and say, yes, there's conversation on that line. Or there's no conversation on that line. It appears to be off the hook. And you say, okay, thank you. Now, as a kid, and I know I wasn't the only one that abused that service, but we abused that service. We did it all the time. I mean, goodness gracious. And about the end of the 60s, early 70s, they said, we're not doing this anymore. That's just too much. Because it was a lot of strain on the operators. Back then, if you needed a fire or police, you had to call the operator. And there was no 911. And then but as a teenager, I'm talking on the phone all the time. So my parents, friends, and relatives would always tell, man, we can't get a hold of you. The line's always busy. And so there was always that time I'm on the phone for 2 hours. My parents said, okay, let the phone rest. And I had brothers and sisters, they wanted to use the phone too, but I know that was rough back then. I mean, just the phone conversation. I'd get home and do my homework, and I'd be on the phone 2 or 3 hours with different friends. And back then, there was no calling long distance. I mean, long distance was very expensive. So we had relatives out of town, very expensive. You just, it was a special occasion. Oh, they'd have reduced rates at night, reduced rates after 11 o'clock, but it would still cost. It still cost a lot of money. That stuff added up. So we weren't allowed to call long distance. So, I mean, I had a friend in another city, about 30 miles away. I couldn't call her because it was long distance. Now, this is well before cell phones. Handheld cell phones didn't come out until 93, 94. So when I'm growing up, there was no voicemail. No, you had to be pretty special if you had an answer machine in the house. We didn't have an answer machine in the house growing up. So either you got a hold of us or you didn't. So, yeah, telephones were a lot different. Everything was rotary dial. I remember one family, oh yeah, the mother actually put a lock. See, we had to dial, rotary dial, but you could put a lock on the phone so that they couldn't use the phone because they were calling some long distance calls and it was costing money, so she put a lock on the phone. And I actually taught them how to dial without doing the rotary. You had the push button, the hang up button. Well, if you pushed it twice, that's a 2. If you had to go 9, that was 9. And so I taught them how to use the phone without bypassing the lock that was on that she had put on the phone. I told them, don't ever tell them that I told you that, but these are just tricks us kids knew and teenagers. Back then, see, these are things that you can tell your kids. It's interesting to them. And the thing about it is, as they grow up, it may not be interesting when it's young, but when they get older, trust me, it gets more interesting. Because I wish I had, I wish I had something like that from my parents and grandparents. I have so many questions to ask them about how did they do this? How did they do this? What did you do when this happened? What did you do? What did you do when World War II broke out? When Pearl Harbor Day? I never got to ask those questions. I did ask my father. He was in the military toward the end of World War II. And what did you do? He really didn't want to talk about it. And me going on the History Channel and watching things, well, they didn't let the black soldiers do much. They were either in charge of the latrine or in the kitchen, or maybe a little security, but they didn't let the black soldiers fight. They didn't let them, no, absolutely not. And they were segregated. So, and he didn't want to talk about it. However, I do know that Truman made sure, a lot of people don't know this about Truman. Of course, he's the one that had to make the decision on the atom bomb to Japan and everything. But Truman also, in his term of office, he integrated the armed forces, and he also said the black soldiers, the black veterans, they will get the same veteran benefits as all the rest of the soldiers. And so that was good because that had a direct effect on my life because my father's first house that he bought was a VA loan. My father's job that raised me was in the government, and he got veterans preference points to get that job. So Truman, even though I wasn't born when he was president, had a direct effect on me. And see, these are some things that people, you should give these stories down through the generations. That's the only way they're going to know. That's the only way. But see, those are things I really never talked to my parents about. My mother died when I was young, so I really never got to talk to her about. But I wish I had more information. And my grandmother lived till I was an older adult. And she's got a lot of relatives. And she did give us a little information. So basically, we know more about her side of the family than anybody. Than any side of the family that I know. And that has helped, but I don't have anything documented like this. And I wish I did. We didn't have the technology back there, except we could have recorded it, voice recording, but we don't have anything like that. So I'm just giving you ideas what you can do and show you what I'm doing. But there are so many questions I would like to ask my parents. What kind of dancing did you do back then? Where did you go to go out when you were young? What church did you go up to? What school did you graduate from? I do know where my parents graduated from. I do know that. And my grandmother told us stories about, I don't know the high school she went to, but I know the city where her and my grandfather grew up. I knew that. There's a lot I don't know. And so what I'm doing is I'm going in chronological order from the time I was born. Anything I remember, I'm doing it off the top of my head. No real big research or anything. Now what's helped me is my father took a lot of pictures when we were young, and those pictures keep my memory sharp as far as, because we look at those pictures all the time and what was happening then. So I can remember a lot from the pictures. So that really helps me. And you can do that too with the photo albums you have. Take your camera, your cell phone, and videotape yourself flipping through the pages and just talking. This is when this happened. This is when that happened. One of the most important pictures in anybody's life is your parents' wedding picture. If you have that, preserve that for your kids and grandkids. So this is, again, this is a generic version, so I'm just making up things to give you ideas of what you can do. I have no idea the cars. Just since I've been born, I wish I had pictures of all the cars that my parents have. I've got a picture of a couple, but man, I would love to see, just the technology of the cars and everything. So I do remember, and I'm telling in my podcast the cars that I remember, and we've got pictures of a couple of them. So, man, this is very important. This is something that you can do. And right now I'm home because of the coronavirus. I don't want to go out and do the things I was before the virus. I had a couple part-time jobs that are on hold right now. So, and those are things I like to do. So, I'm just letting you know, these are things you can do for yourself. What church did you go to? Anybody that there's a lot of people that your offspring may know as adults. They don't know that you grew up with that person. I look in the census, Ancestry.com. I look in the census there. The census of 1940 is already out, and I'm waiting on the census for 1950 to come out. But I look, and it goes address by address, and I go looking at the my neighbors, my parents' neighbors back then. Wow, I knew some of their neighbors as adults. I used to work with some of their neighbors, and I never knew that they were my parents' neighbors. We never talked about that, and now it's too late. But see, these are things that, because I'm sure your offspring know people that you know as adults, but you don't know that they grew up together, went to school together. Okay. So that's enough for now. I just want to let you know of what I'm doing, and I have a few on YouTube. There's no way I'm putting all these on YouTube. I'm saving them, and I actually have to have an external hard drive because each one of mine are 3 gig and too much for my computer. So I went out and bought, this is 2 terabytes, so something like that. That's the way to do it. And hopefully my offspring will save it, and it makes a great Christmas present too. Birthday present. I can't think of anything better, because now they'll know a lot more, and they can pass it on down to the generations, because that's one thing we don't have is generations. Let me end by saying I've just observed everybody alive today is a clone of one of their 4 grandparents. Now, it might be one of their 8 great-grandparents, but everybody alive today, if you look at their grandparents. Now, the problem is I don't have pictures of I have pictures of all my grandparents. I don't have pictures of all my great-grandparents. But as now that technology is, you can save these things, and you can actually put pictures on Ancestry.com, and those seemingly stay forever. Alexa, stop. We didn't have Alexa back then. So research it for yourself. If you can find pictures, and you'll see that I'm near right about everybody looks like one of their 4 grandparents. All right. Have a blessed day.